Welcome all of you once again on another panel discussion, Rising Social Media Game for the New Decade. I would like to welcome our moderator, Mr. Benedict Hayes, Joint Managing Director, Athenos Digital Marketing. Now our panelists, Mr. Hitesh Dhingra, Founder and Managing Director, The Man Company, Ms. Tarika Soni, Head of EU Gaming Snap Inc., Ms. Richa Khera, Head of Digital Marketing, KFC India, Ms. Soumya Iyer, Founder and CEO, Divyo Digital. I would request all the delegates to keep posting their questions in the chat box, and the panel will address a selected few at the end of this session. Over to you, Ben.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'd like to thank the panel. It's lovely to have met you all in the last few hours, and I hope we can have a good discussion. I thought I'd get the ball rolling with a big, juicy question to start with. Obviously, the game has quite literally changed since March. Everything has kind of gone up in the air with the pandemic, and it's been a huge disruption for everyone, everything. And I suppose social media has been a massive sort of important pillar that's come out the back of this for many businesses now, given the fact that the normal way of operating has completely changed, and obviously social predominantly driving a lot of the chatter and things like that was happening around the whole event. So if the landscape's completely changed and social's kind of changing with that, I'd like to kind of first ask the panelists. We obviously have two panelists. One is two are coming from the brand side. One is coming from agency. One is coming from the platform side of things. But I want to understand from the panelists how their businesses have adapted and how socially they may have adapted and transformed basis what is actually going on around us. So I'll start with Hitesh. Hitesh is obviously the Man Company. And Hitesh, I'd love to know, it's been crazy times out there. How have you as a business dealt with it? And how maybe have you thrived amongst all of this, and how social been part of that? So please tell.
Sure. Thanks, Ben, for your question. Look, so Man Company is a digitally native brand. So we were born on social media. And honestly, I think it has been 5 years, but we wouldn't have been where we are today if not for social media, right? So we are very aggressively present on across the mediums, I mean, be it Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. Right? I think post-COVID, what we realized was it was very important to kind of, in fact, even more important to humanize the brand that we are. We have a good community that follows us on our social media. And instead of focusing on sales or driving business, we started engaging with this community a lot more, right? So when the first lockdown happened, I think the marketing team kind of conceptualized quarantine Olympics, right? So we kind of ran a 45 days Olympics on our Instagram, right? Where we engaged the community because it was very important to kind of make our followers feel good about themselves, right?
Sure.
When I think
this is like an Olympics. This is an at-home Olympics sort of thing. So I would be at home participating with this Olympics.
Exactly. Something like doing, let's say, 25 burpees in a minute, right? So something like that.
Okay.
So every day there was an interesting challenge, and people were supposed to kind of create a short video, post it on social media, right? And we had winners every week for every activity, actually. So I think that worked really well. Apart from that, I think after first 30, 40 days, we realized that I think obviously people were getting a lot of our followers. They started asking us tips how to do their own haircuts, right? Because now it was 30, 45 days post-lockdown.
I could do with that tip, actually. That'd be very good.
Yeah. So
very good.
we ended up creating a lot of content, DIY content, right? So how to do haircut, how to kind of keep yourself motivated, groomed, right? Even if you're taking a virtual call, Zoom calls, or so yeah. So I think we created a lot of content just to drive engagement, right? And kind of create very active communication with our followers instead of either lying down or focusing on sales, right? And that's what we realized, that I think empathizing with your users in their tough times is a lot more important, right? And I think it kind of improves the bond, strengthens the bond that you have with your consumers, right? So I think that's what we did. And now, obviously, I think things are back to normal, considering our e-commerce channel is pretty strong. So we have seen, I think, improved traction, be it on social present across marketplaces as well. And we see almost 200-250% jump in business because of that as well, right? So for us, yeah, business is kind of back to normal, except for some bit of offline that we had pre-COVID, and it hasn't really started as yet. But yeah, online is doing pretty well now.
Brilliant, brilliant. And so thanks for that. You know, Rika, KFC. KFC is a very different animal, I guess. You've got a lot of stores out there, and I guess by unfortunately you've been forced to sort of close them, and so digital really must be one of your own major drivers here. How have you handled that as a brand, and how social being adapted to help with that, and how's KFC as a brand navigated this water?
Sure. Yeah, that's actually a very, very interesting question. So, we're actually a very, very popular brand on social, not just in India, but globally as well. So, around the time when the lockdown was announced, a lot of our restaurants also, of course, had to shut down. But our objective at that point in time was to continue talking about the brand, spread the cheer, in times where consumers were anxious. So we didn't want to go dark like a lot of other brands did. We wanted to continue talking to consumers. We wanted to continue speaking to them, engaging with them in the right way. Also, people were actually spending a lot of time on social at that point in time. So we decided to give our users a stage to, come display their creativity and have some fun with the brand. So we came up with a concept which was called KFC Home Studios. So we tied up with a couple of influencers and we got people to curate a lot of content. And we ran this for about good 3 to 4 weeks, and we actually saw consumers sharing videos of how they were having fun at home. In a huge way. It was a big success for us, and we actually curated. We were able to garner a lot of content from users, and this ran actually into about 14-15 hours of content, which is totally UGC. And as part of this, we also did something which is called as KFC Home Kitchen. Because of course everybody went into the kitchens. A lot of first timers also started cooking. Suddenly, how to cook became like a big thing. So we also engaged with users and we gave them recipes to cook using KFC chicken, something we haven't done it before.
Was this the secret recipe of KFC? Was it the Colonel's recipe, or?
That's a secret.
Kept that one dark as well, is it? Yeah.
So.
Nice.
We continue to communicate with our consumers in a fun, engaging way, and we're very heavy on topical marketing as well. The moment Dhoni announced his retirement, our agency actually turned around a really nice creative saying "the greatest finisher" with a picture of an empty bucket. So we're pretty heavy on social that way.
Very good. There's some nice ideas there. I like the home cooking one. I've personally been home cooking a lot of late, so it's been nice. But great. And okay, so I'll jump now to one of the platforms that are out there. So Tarika of Snap. How have you seen this for your platform in India, especially? Like, what's been going on? Have you seen a massive upsurge in usage? What sort of things have been happening on the platform? Has it been an interesting time for you? And I'm assuming people have a lot more time at home, but they obviously maybe the platforms have seen a lot more happening. So do tell what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely right. Probably the largest uptakes. I'm surprised the platform hasn't crashed. A lot of uptake, as you would imagine, right? Like people have a lot more time. They're spending a lot more minutes per day. The mind share has shifted into socializing with their friends and family where they're physically apart. So obviously, considering Snap is a communication first platform, we obviously see a massive uptick in 3 key verticals. I would say is video, taking pictures, and then games. Those are 3 key ones that we've noticed even now. Now we call it we're in a new world. I don't see that trend trimming down anytime soon. I think that is going to continue as is. We've obviously seen a massive uptick in the first few months. So let's say like when it hit in March, April, May, June, 3 months, our daily active user base grew rapidly. The DAUs increased. And the funny thing is like we've always had the strength as Snap to be the AR first platform, like augmented reality is our backbone. We've never seen this kind of an uptick in video calling or group video chats that we've seen now in the last 6 months. So I would say like augmented reality has always been the forefront. That's the way the new generation or the next generation or whatever you want to call it, the Gen Zs now, is that's the way they talk, right? Like they talk with pictures, they talk with videos. That spiked, that's always been our backbone from AR, but now to see that spike in video and not just like you and me one-on-one talking, it's family, groups of 6, 8. I don't know if you guys have heard of the app called House Party. That picked up, right? So that, think of that phenomena suddenly coming into Snap, but obviously a lot more vetted. You don't just walk into a room because you have to have me as your friend and I have to have you. So that closed loop, but in bigger platforms of 6 to 8, or even larger groups actually, of where they're socializing and actually just hanging out with their friends, like you would in a corridor or a drawing room. It's like those weird, like you'll see the quality of chats is now, very water cooler chat. It's not necessarily just an update on their day-to-day. That's how it started. I also noticed that multiplayer gaming in general picked up quite a bit. And Snap does a lot of our own games. We have our own studios, and we've obviously tied up with partners that produce those games for us. And even in India, you will see the multiplayer gaming or any ad format or product that we rolled out that was more to do with more than one person, like 3 or 5 people, tends to do a lot better now than a one-on-one conversation. So that's a big, big change or trend that I see on the platform. In fact, I think like we saw a 66% uptake in just games alone during the time of COVID, which is a huge uptake from where we were when we started. I think besides that, the two things that Snap really did concentrate heavily on, like the brands have, because we are a consumer app at the end of the day, was making sure that all our content on the right-hand side of the app, where people are consuming content, because not only are you engaging and communicating with your have the time at home, right? And that consumption needed to be vetted. So all our content is obviously vetted, but now we're getting the quality of local content on Snapchat, where you will get directly from WHO to tell us exactly what has happened to COVID. Is there a vaccine? Isn't a vaccine? So tying up directly with the sources and not aggregator was a very big thing for us to do. I think that's the one big check mark I do give.
So that's amazing. So basically, all the kind of medical stuff that gets thrown around, the doctor stuff, is all vetted and controlled, and not allowed to kind of propagate if it's not WHO sealed and approved.
It's all WHO sealed, and it comes organically from WHO, pulled directly as a 6-second cut. So it's not coming through an aggregator or a news source. It's coming directly, which is important, right? Like that's what we want to hear. They want to hear news, which is factual. So we created a lot of filters and lenses for WHO, like, wash your hands. This is how you wash your hands. Teaching the younger generation, and then they would share it forward with the people at home, which is really interesting.
Oh, really good, and really good. So you kind of make sure you got that social element in there, and make sure everyone's up to date. That's good. So I'll just quickly now jump to the agency side of things. We've got with Soumya Iyer of DVIO. I am an agency as well, and I know what I've seen from in terms of the brands. Their spends have kind of wobbled a lot, but the focus has moved potentially from my side into media which is sort of more free or social, or kind of where that kind of free media can be kind of garnered. What have you seen at your side at the agency, and how's social been part of that, and what's been the sort of the brand appetite to advertise for one, but also the sort of what's been going on from the agency side of things?
Sure, Ben. So, needless to say, the adoption of digital, has accelerated, and it has. We've seen in just 4 months what would have otherwise taken us years. And with that sort of accelerated adoption, we saw that the consumer behavior across brands and businesses was also changing rapidly. It needed us to really keep a tab on, consumer insights, brand by brand. Having said that, when we saw all the changes that are happening with the way people are behaving on social, clearly there was a skew. Media consumption was, a lot of people were spending time on digital, on social. But the question was, while we had so much of time and attention of our consumers, how do you use it wisely and appropriately, right? So
that's when we said, our mantra, if I can call it that, should be content for context. 7 billion people were going through, fears of pandemic or fears of really losing jobs. They were concerned for their family, they're concerned for their health. So, in fact, in March, I remember we had, our social calendars, our content calendars, our films, all ready to roll out for most of our brands. And all of that came to a grinding halt.
Ripped up and chucked in.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And and in fact, I just cite a couple of examples when I say content for context. Is one of our apparel brands called W, which is into women's ethnic brand. We were right in the season launch, and what we did was, when the 21-day lockdown, the first 21-day lockdown was announced, that was probably the darkest time for us, right? So we didn't know what was happening. There was so much scare, anxiety. Businesses were really worried. We changed the entire new sort of season launch to, instead of 21-day lockdown, to 21-day awakening. Okay. So we sort of urged people to look at the positive side of things. We were the positive tone of voice, like many other brands just spoke here. We asked the woman who was sort of, W woman is an empowered woman. So we asked her to sort of focus on the good part, which is fresh air, the chirping of the birds, yoga, inner health, mental balance. So 21 days of really dishing out stuff that they can do while they are in the lockdown. Similarly, McDonald's North and East, in fact, there's a bit of a background there, right? Where good part of last year, North and East McDonald was shut because of a legal dispute, and people were really sort of waiting for McDonald's to open up. And when it happened towards the later part of the year, we got on board with McDonald's, and just within like less than a year, the pandemic happened and the stores were shut again. So that was quite a setback for our consumers. So we spent some time, really listening into the sentiment, and we realized that people really missed us. So we started to, and like Richa said, the idea, McDonald's also a very buzzy brand in that sense. Brand love is at the core of everything that we do. And what we said was that we, no matter what, have to keep the social chatter alive at the same rate as when the stores were open. That's really the mandate that we went with. And, one of the core things that really helped us keep our engagement alive was gamification. So we, so even little puzzles, using of burgers and fries, using design elements of burgers and fries, bringing out a lot of quizzes, questions, having conversations with people, telling them that we miss them as well, and having one-on-one conversations with people is how we sort of reacted to that, right? So that's sort of that we were very, very focused across brands on creating content for the context that we were living in. But moving on from an agency side, like you said, are brands spending more money? Are they spending less money? I think it differs from industry to industry. So when we talk about our clients in entertainment, when we talk about our clients in e-commerce, clearly there's an upsurge there. So the task really is two-pronged. One is to build brand preference. And on the other hand, your media costs are sort of slightly lower, and therefore try and get the acquisitions for the e-com guys, for the entertainment guys, the OTT guys, as fast as you can at the lowest cost. But on the other hand, businesses that were primarily brick and mortar, were traditional in that sense and not digital first. Our goal was to use social media and try and mimic human connections as much as possible virtually, right? So one very powerful way in which we attempted to do that with some amount of success is personalization. So we moved public conversations to private conversations. We used the social media platforms to drive people to chats. We worked on building really smart chat bots to mimic human behavior, so that the sales, choice of products can all in a way be seamless. So that's how we brought in technology. That's how we brought in personalization to use social media in the most effective way. So I think that's basically, as from an agency perspective, how things have rolled out for us.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think, yeah, just from our side, we've seen similar things. Like obviously, some businesses have obviously downturned, others have gone
Yes.
up, as
Yeah.
you'd expect. So it's been quite an interesting time, but hopefully everything's stabilizing now, I find, and it's starting to grow again, which is all
Yeah.
good. So just the other big thing that's happening, then, guys, is obviously COVID is one thing, but there's been the other thing with obviously I guess the sort of tensions between India and China, and I guess that's an offshoot of COVID. And one of the kind of backlashes or fallouts of that is TikTok. Now, TikTok in the social space was a very big player. They got themselves up there, and a lot of our brands were using it. And so I'm just interested to know, and obviously, how's this affected you guys, especially from the brand side of things? Like, was it a platform that you used consistently? If it was a platform you used consistently, have you looked at other platforms to sort of fill the gap? And if not, then fine. But has there been a change in strategy because of this? And obviously, have you seen other brands come in? So I know Snap is there as well. So be interested to see how they look at this on that side. But yeah, please tell me, and I will start this one with Rika. How's that kind of affected you? If the whole TikTok scenario, is it business as usual, or was it kind of a big change for you when that happened?
Ben, you want me to take that question, right?
Please, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yes, this has been a very tricky one for us. We had many of our brands really invest in TikTok and grow their follower base and engagement on TikTok. And in fact, I'll cite an example of a OTT brand, and OTT gaming brand. We in fact run an entire reality show with TikTok as the primary platform. So much of investment had gone in, and when TikTok shut down, the first sort of thought or response was, this is temporary. We just have to wait for it to come back. But then, it started to look like it was more permanent. And then, of course, there was rise of Koso, Chingari, and, there were a lot of deliberation and considerations on whether we should be jumping onto any of those platforms. But Ben, you're an agency and you know that, you can't use platforms like a checklist, so there is a lot of strategy, content investment, media investment that goes to build a channel for a brand. So some of our questions really were that in case TikTok comes back, then would some of these local players or other international players have had enough time to really catch up to the exact place that TikTok is in right now? And in fact, TikTok shutting down brought in some sort of a sense of impermanence of social media platforms, right? So we had to really take a call based on some of those considerations. So I'll tell you, for most of our brands, what we've really done is we've been safe, which is, we said, if TikTok comes back, great, we get back on it, and we will not sort of spread too thin and try to get on multiple platforms right now. Reels seemed like a safe bet. So we said Instagram's, safe. We know that it's here to stay, and we will be able to mimic most of what we do as content on Instagram, on TikTok, on Instagram as well. So that's how we approach the TikTok banner, and we're still really hoping that it comes back. Yeah.
Maybe Reliance will pull that cash out and then buy it.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're hoping for.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, from the brand perspective, with Rika KFC, like, was it a platform that you used a lot? And have you sort of obviously aligned your strategies elsewhere? Was it something that you were using or not?
Well, actually, for us, we weren't very active on TikTok as a platform. For us, platform is it's almost like where we go where the audience goes. So a lot of our audience, of course, is tier one. It's a function of where our restaurants are located. And we're actually present in 100 cities in India, but of course, a large chunk sits within tier one cities. So we weren't very active on TikTok per se, but we started to test waters on that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So really business as usual for you guys. And is that the same sentiment for the Man Company as well, Hitesh? Is it? I guess a similar audience profiling as well. Although I have my own opinion on that, in that there's a lot of voyeuristic tier one city folk who watch TikTok but might not necessarily actually post the content, if you know what I mean. So so I don't know whether that's a thought in it at all. But yeah, Hitesh, how have you kind of played with it?
So
TikTok?
we were, so honestly, I mean, we were not even present on TikTok till last year, November, when one of our campaigns kind of went crazily viral there. And all of a sudden we started getting a lot of traffic from TikTok, right? So, and we realized that I think over 10,000 people had reposted that video or their own version of that poem that we did, which kind of went viral, right? So after that, we realized the potential and started working with few micro influencers, right? But I think we were still testing waters. Probably did it for a couple of months. And so surprisingly, I think response was good. So we didn't start spending on media as such. So we were not really advertising on TikTok, but I think whatever we were doing with influencers there was kind of working out well, right? And we started seeing at least a small percentage surge in traffic as well as transactions from tier 2 and 3 cities. So no harm done. But now I think we've started seriously evaluating some of the local platforms targeting the same audience, right? So platform like Trail, Raposo, Chingari. So now we are evaluating all of them, right? Because we realize that there's a huge potential, and if we can be there from day one, I mean, it can probably work well for the brand in long run.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I guess down to Tarika, with TikTok out of the way, is there an opportunity for Snap? Is there a plan, or is it that hush hush?
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of not sounding too opportunistic, yes, we have you obviously seen an uptick, and you will generation, right? Like it was a younger platform skewed between under 24s. I know that one of you mentioned, I think it was Richa who mentioned this earlier, the exclusivity of Snap over TikTok has always been pretty stark because of the same urban, young youth, tier 1 city phenomena. And I think that's one big exclusivity factor, which obviously we're not going to try and bridge the gap against, because we do require a certain size of a device that's a smartphone, since the entire app is audio, video, and augmented reality based. It's heavy. And when I say heavy, I mean a smartphone with a certain spec can own that app. Otherwise, it's going to get glitchy, right? So you can't, even if you wanted to penetrate into a tier 3 market, we probably wouldn't be able to, because the app wouldn't allow for that infrastructure. So I think the idea is not to bridge the gap, but I feel like organically on the influencer side, because these influencers didn't really get enough time to spread their wings on other platforms, I feel like they're the ones who are now looking to diversify their portfolios or pick up their audience and take them along to Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat. We are seeing that phenomena of a drain of local, not so local, international, whatever you want to call it, kind of influencers that we do see an influx on that side. And obviously, like I said, the overlap was like below 15% of our audience with TikTok, always has been. So I don't feel like there is any way for us to bridge that gap. And like I said, I think we have an infrastructural difference. Yeah. The other piece is the way I looked at TikTok and versus Snap, from if I zoomed out of my role right now, was the difference in how you use it, right? Like Snapchat is not an entertainment app. You consume news, you consume NFL, cricket, whatever you need to on the consumption side. And majority of your time and energy, if you're spending 30, 40 minutes on that app a day, you're actually communicating with your friends and family. So it's a communication app, and you're using pictures to communicate. It's an active base, right? It's not a passive consumption of content. It's an active consumption of sharing content. So I think that's a fundamental difference in how the apps were used in the past when TikTok was live in India. And I think that behavior in users will still exist, but we're not trying to bridge that gap.
Right. Oh, great. Okay, so just a branch off now, and we've actually got a lot of questions coming in from the audience, which is great. So I think we'll just do a couple more questions each, and then hopefully get into some of these questions as I can see some quite juicy ones. But just a quick one to Richa and Hitesh. What's new for you guys? What is so obviously we talked about a few platforms here, but is there anything new, sparkly, which you've been doing that you would like to share? Is there some new platforms, social selling maybe? Is it video chats, consultations? Is there anything that kind of has come out? And what does it look like going into 2021? Is there something that you as a brand are looking to sort of develop or work upon within the social sphere? And I'll put that out to Hitesh first.
Sure. Look, so I think in the last couple of years, we've realized the power of influencers, right? And especially micro influencers. And we know that I think Airbnb and Uber were kind of born during recession, right? Because people are looking to kind of alternate ways to earn money. So we probably used that opportunity and ended up launching TMC partner program in April, right? Immediately post lockdown, because we realized that it is, I think, instead of depending on a platform, right? What if we create our own pipeline of influencers who become brand evangelists, and then, I mean, wherever they are, they start selling our product, right? And start distributing our content. Within, I mean, 3-4 months of launch, we've already got more than 2,000 influencers who have kind of signed up. And over, I think, 10-11 hours of content that has been posted across different platforms. And some of the new platforms where we as a brand were not even present, right? Platforms like Proposo, Trail, etc. So yeah, so I think for us, we believe that I think that's a right way to go, and probably I think that's what we are looking to kind of build this year as well as next year. Build our own pipeline of micro influencers and distributing content across the platforms using these influencers.
Yeah, no, we were chatting earlier. I can see potentially an opportunity to get some free shaving equipment, doing some influencing for you as such. But I like the idea. It's very, very good. And what about you, Rika, at KFC? What's new for you? Is there anything sort of in pipeline for next year and tail end for this year?
Yeah. So, what we see is that ephemeral content does pretty well for us. Anything which is short-lived creates that excitement for the consumer. And the moment you tell somebody, this is going to be taken away from you, or, you're not going to see this after 24 hours, I think that works very well. So one, ephemeral content does really well for us. The second thing that we've started to foray into is a lot of influencer content creation. We're getting bigger on that. The idea is to connect with really authentic people who love the brand KFC and can express their love for the brand in their own particular way. So we want to keep that authenticity going for the brand, for the influencer, in a way that, they connect with the brand. And of course, it doesn't look like a force fit. So that's one thing that we're going to, get bigger into. Of course, as I said, while largely a lot of this is an urban phenomena, we're also trying to get into slowly into regional influencers as well. So we recently collaborated with Anis Seth, who's a very popular influencer in Bangalore. Some really fun content we've created with a couple of regional influencers as well. So that's one area of work we're picking up full steam ahead.
Okay, brilliant. And I guess I'm thinking now that we've got a little bit of time left. We've not got much time left, sorry, and we've got actually some quite interesting questions from the audience. So I might throw some swerve balls at you, which you're not prepared for, guys. But the first one actually coming in, which I think is actually quite important, is how big a concern is brand safety for the brands, and how those concerns actually addressed. And the other side of it is, there's been a huge spike in fraudulent transactions, as well as fraudulent adverts, fraudulent information. How have you been kind of safeguarding your brand, and potentially maybe your brand has been kind of fraudulently used, or how as a brand have you been trying to safeguard against that? If I put that on to you again, Rika, like have you seen any challenges in that side of things, and from brand safety, how are you kind of managing that side of it? Especially with influencers, you can do anything they want to do, I guess.
Sure. So yeah, brand safety, of course, is one of the very, very large areas of work and concern that we typically have. So we go to very selected platforms, and we're very cognizant of where the ads are supposed to be running. So that's one part of it. Secondly, we try and do as much programmatic controlled inventory buys across wherever we go. And thirdly, of course, as I said, we are very cognizant of who we want to partner with, from an influencer point of view, from, even creating organic content or, any UGC that we're trying to drive with consumers. We're very particular about, where the content is going. So we do have our balances and checks in place for that.
And Hitesh, is that the same for you? What's the scenario with you, brand safety and your brand being out there, especially with influencers and things like that? How do you govern
Yeah,
that?
no, definitely. So I think there's a due process that we follow while curating the influencers. Even for the new program that we have launched, EMC Partner, I mean, there's a proper verification process, right? Where, I mean, there's a manual verification, validation of each and every influencer who kind of signs up. So even though I think we are a relatively new brand, but we take our brand safety very, very seriously.
Cool. And from the platform side of things, how do you manage that sort of thing? Because obviously the platform, anyone can create anything out there, and I suppose how do you govern that, Tarika? How do you keep control of that? And I'm sure you get all sorts of lawsuits and things that you coming at you if you're not controlling that. So Tarika, how does the platform manage all of that, and obviously keep the brand safety at heart?
Yeah, so what you mentioned is accurate, right? Like in our case for Snap, for example, you can be as big an influencer as you need to be, and you still have to be vetted. It is not an open platform. So unlike all the platforms there are a lot of platforms out there that are open. If I want to post something today, I can post it from my home and just publish it. YouTube used to be like that in the past, and there are a few now, and they've all been in trouble and in the news for that reason. But I think that's the difference, right? Like it has to be curated. I know people try to keep it organic and less curated, but it does lose its traction on the safety side if you allow for that. So I don't know if you probably have seen this in the news already, is how we decided to de-promote the Donald Trump account on Snapchat. That was a very strategic move, right? And the reason we did that was because we have the right as a platform to promote and not promote, which is curated content. We are curating it. So I think the biggest difference that we've always known from the start is, don't forget, we are ephemeral in nature. So I feel like that itself, one, carries that safety net. The second piece is we actually have dedicated teams, whether we like it or not, that goes through a rigorous process. Like our ads process takes 72 hours, which can be really frustrating if you think about it from an advertiser standpoint, but it does go to that level of vetting for that reason. It's, your context is content. So like if I put you in the middle of a Modi campaign and you are a man brand, or you're some random brand, it's not going to aesthetically look correct. So it goes through a rigorous process on the ad side, it goes through a rigorous process on the influencer side, and everything is vetted and curated. So we act as partners. It's not an open platform from microphone to the world that you can just walk in and speak. That's why it's a closed loop. Like I actually have to have Hitesh as my friend, and Hitesh has to have me as his friend for me to talk to him. There's no other way for me to talk to anybody on Snap.
Yeah. So there's control at all points and things. But is it a manual vetting that you have there, or is it automated in some way? A bit of both.
It's both actually. So it is automated to a large degree when it comes to advert search or image search, etc. From the ads perspective, we also work with third parties on the ad side, the GeoEdges of the world that you're all aware of. That vet that manually as well. So the reason it takes 2 to 3 days is actually whatever falls through from the machine goes into the hands of the human.
Sure. Okay, fair enough. So it's more like a automated flagging with a human kind of element stuck on the back. All right, fair enough. So there's another question that's come in here, which is, do you see India as a winner takes all market, or is there room for many platforms to thrive? So I'll start with the brands. Hitesh, how do you see that? Is it sort of a one platform or a market, or is there, you think there's a lot of playing field across all the different platforms?
Look, I think obviously, I mean, till now, if you look at it, we've got 3-4 major platforms, right? I mean, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Snap, right? And TikTok kind of, I think within a very short span of time, kind of garnered millions of followers. So I think that there's a definite opportunity to create local platforms targeting different segment of users. So it's not just going to be Facebook and Instagram kind of market, right? And we've seen that in China as well to some extent, where there are different platforms targeting different segment of users, right? And we believe that I think India should be that case.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I guess it's back to Tariga. Like, I guess it's obviously as a platform, you see this as an opportunity, and it's obviously not one player out there. There's plenty of greenfield for everyone, especially with the audiences that are there. Would you agree, Tariga?
Sorry?
Would you agree that there's it's not a one platform market? There's plenty of opportunity.
I think Hitesh has already put it really well, to be honest.
Yeah.
I do believe that it's segmented. Like I said, we don't have too much of an overlap with others. And I think, even if you look at your own consumption pattern, I have a consumption pattern of reading Twitter once a day. When I wake up in the morning, I pick up my news from there. Then I look at Instagram when I'm out with my friends or taking a picture then. And I look at LinkedIn when I have to actually connect physically or connect with a professional for work, which can be multiple times in a day. And I'm communicating with my friends and my family on Snapchat 6 times a day. So my consumption pattern isn't really skewed or monopolized in any fashion. So nor will India's be. I feel like depending on each platform's capability, I think each of them actually has quite a decent niche. It's also a really large market, right? Like it's like billions of people to tap into. So I feel like that's one of those lucrative markets which actually works for most.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I just a quick one to the IMAI guys. How much time do we have?
So we are right on time, and I just would, because we have back-to-back sessions and people are enjoying it, and so I would just like to thank all of you for such a brilliant session. A special thanks to Ben for keeping the conversation such an exciting one. Thank you all of our members, supporters, and friends of MarkOn. Thank you, delegates, for being here.